Hi, there's been a little break in the podcast and video review activity for the last couple of weeks. The reason for which was that I contracted COVID, which was, as some of you might be aware, quite horrible. Um, I wasn't hospitalized, didn't have to take any special medication or anything, so it was not nearly as bad as it could have been, of course, but it was still pretty horrible. Taking time to recuperate. I'm now out of self isolation. So I'm finally back and can talk about stuff again that is less important than a deadly disease. Speaking of deadly diseases, um, some time ago, in fact, I think 2 days before I fell ill, I watched David Cronenberg's early feature, Crimes of the Future. It's a kind of a companion film to his other early feature, Stereo, in that it's very experimental in style. It's filmed silent with voiceover narration, and it's about the kinds of themes and topics that he would explore in more conventionally narratively structured films later on in his career. This film follows the character of Adrian Tripod, who does pronounce his name in that odd way, who is involved at the House of Skin, a dermatological institute run by the mysterious Antoine Rouge. We're told in voiceover by Tripod himself, played by Roland Lodzik, that a disease developed from the use of Rouge's cosmetics and became known as Rouge's malady, which resulted in the deaths of most women around the world. And so Tripod goes through various situations and institutions as man copes with living in a defeminized society, and eventually falls in with a group of heterosexual pedophiles who plan on bringing a young girl to premature puberty and impregnating her. It's all very strange and off-putting. And a lot of what I said about stereo in that review, you can kind of read here as well. As Kim Newman said, these two films demonstrate that it's possible to be both interesting and boring at the same time. A lot of Cronenberg's ideas in this setting and structure are intellectually quite interesting and engaging and challenging, but the film is presented in such an off-putting, deliberately alienating experimental fashion, as I say, with no um, diegetic sound at all, just voiceover narration and a discordant soundtrack of electronic noise. It's quite hard to engage with what you're seeing. The photography is interesting. Unlike stereo, it's filmed in color, but still shot around various institutions in Canada that look eerily modernist and off-putting, rather like filming it around the Barbican, which looks like a concrete alien colony that's been dropped down in the middle of London. So it's not a film I would recommend for fun, but it's still something interesting. It's perhaps the kind of film that's only really worth watching if you're really motivated, if you really have a great interest in Cronenberg and his work. Um, Otherwise, it's something perhaps that's more worth reading about. As of this recording, Cronenberg is working on a new film, his first in, I think, 8 or 9 years, which is again called Crimes of the Future. Um, it's been filmed on location in Greece with a very impressive all-star cast, and it's apparently a little bit up in the air over whether or not this might actually be a remake, a conventional narrative version of this early feature. Even if it isn't, then it might well be a retread of similar ideas. It's nice to see that Cronenberg's filmmaking has perhaps evolved in an interesting way over the 50-year gap between the two features. But as I said, Crimes of the Future, the 1970 iteration, is not perhaps a film that's really worth seeing unless you're a Cronenberg completist, and even then, it might not really be worth your time.